right, friends, looks like we are live. I'm going to throw some recipes in the chat of what we'll be making today. So just give me a couple minutes. All right, cool. So I put both of the recipes in the chat. So today we're going to be making a sausage and kale skillet, which is super easy. It's something that I go back to pretty often just because it's quick and takes very little prep. And then we'll also be making some Lucky Charm treats. So kind of like Rice Krispie treats, we'll make them with Lucky Charms instead. Let me show you what we'll be using. And if you've been tuning in, you might notice we're in a slightly different spot. I'm at my parents' house for a few days, and they have a couple dogs, so I'm going to apologize in advance if they start barking. They are very small and very cute, but are also very protective and love to bark when they hear any noise outside. So for our sausage and kale skillet, we've only got 5 ingredients. We've got some pasta sauce, some garbanzo beans, kale, sausage, and cheese. And then for our cheese, we've got butter, marshmallows, a little bit of salt, and Lucky Charms. You can use off-brand. That's what I'm using. I don't necessarily always care, but if you have a preference, feel free to use that. So we will go ahead and get started. All right, so let me pull up the recipes. So we'll start with our sausage and kale skillet. And again, Julie Colbath, that's why it's called Cooking with Colbath. I'm the coordinator of Civic Engagement in the Office of Student Life. So I oversee the pantry. We're still open on Fridays, so if you need anything, feel free to make an appointment by emailing UM-Dearborn pantry@umich.edu. Cool, now we'll get started for real. So I have everything sort of ready. One of the reasons that I was making this is because I had a bunch of kale that I needed to use. So what I did is I tore it apart and then just froze it. Since we were going to do it last week, but we didn't end up doing it. So I'm going to get out a little bit of oil. My mom loves to shop at Costco. So, woo! We're getting our pan hot. So the recipe doesn't necessarily tell you this, but I'm just going to put a little bit of oil in the bottom. Just to help the sausage sort of brown nicer and so that it doesn't stick in the pan. So we'll let that, we'll just swirl it around and let that heat for a second. And so the recipe calls for Italian sausage. You can use really any brand you want. I've never tried this Dearborn brand before, but I thought it might be fun, especially to support something more local. Let me grab a knife. Oh, I also forgot my parents have a grandfather clock, so you might hear that go off. Sorry, it's very annoying until you get used to it. So what we're gonna do, and I know it's kind of gross to have to do it, but we are going to take the sausage out of the shells. Ooh, these are all connected. I'm just gonna, you can tell they're like linked together. I'll just cut that. And then you can just kind of squeeze, and then the casing will kind of break. So you'll just squeeze out a couple links into there. The recipe, look at that nice sizzle. The recipe calls for half of a package. So the nice thing is that you can buy a package and then freeze what you don't use. And so last time I did that, I ended up freezing my sausage, and then I made a gnocchi skillet, which was really good. That's just broken half. And it just had like sausage and spinach and gnocchi and pasta sauce and cheese, of course. I think I might have my heat a little bit too high. I'm going to turn it down a little bit. Whew. All right, so I'm going to wash my hands. So this is just touching the meat. And then this is already starting to brown on one side. You just want to break up the sausage as it's cooking. So it's just in like little crumbles, sort of. I like this recipe too, right? Like I said, it's really fast and easy. And I feel like on days like today, where it's like super hot, I don't want to spend much time in the kitchen. I also definitely don't want to bake anything. And I don't want my stove on for too long, making my house hot. Especially if you don't have air. That is no fun. So again, I'm just kind of chopping this into little pieces. Another nice thing about this recipe is that it's gluten-free as long as your sausages are, which most of the time sausages don't have gluten in them, I believe. And you can make it dairy-free if you just use different non-dairy cheese, or not top it with cheese if that's not your jam. All right, let me show you. So this sausage is starting to get brown. Sorry, the lighting's a little bit weird. But we'll just let it so that we don't really see any pink left to make sure it's cooked all the way. If you have a favorite fast, quick meal, feel free to drop it in the chat. Recipe sharing is always welcome. This recipe also is only one pan, which makes me happy, and that means less that I have to clean. I'm getting there. So I have a little bit of pink. You could use more sausage if you want. Since I mostly eat vegetarian, I'm not always the biggest meat fan, and so I find that it's nicer for me to not have as much meat. Just looking at the recipe. And if you wanted to just make it vegetarian, I think the website had suggested maybe like subbing eggplant or mushrooms for the ground or for the sausage, which probably would be good. I don't cook with eggplant that often, and so it can be something that's like a little bit trickier to cook with. And not everybody loves the texture, but it's super good. All right. So the next part of the recipe was saying that while this is browning, to wash your kale and to cut it into strips. Whenever I do this, I normally just rip it. And you kind of want to rip around the core of it, the stem, because sometimes that can be really tough. So again, I had a bunch of kale that I bought and didn't end up using, so I froze it. I like to throw it in smoothies sometimes too. It adds a nice just like some extra fiber and some extra nutrients to your smoothies. It doesn't always make them the most fun color, but it can be super tasty. Spinach is also good too. So if you ever have like extra greens, you can freeze them if they're about to go bad and you don't want to use them. So our meat looks pretty good. It's looking pretty browned. It's to sizzle a little bit. I'm going to see what we add next. Stir it into the sausage and continue to cook until it is fully wilted. So we are going to throw the kale into the skillet. And I know it says one bunch. Kind of do whatever you want. If you don't like a lot of kale, don't add it. If you do, feel free to add it. Bunches can definitely vary in size. And as you may have experienced cooking with greens, a lot of the times they shrink down. So I still have a little bit left. I might just add in a little bit more if it looks like I need more, or I might just put that back in the freezer to use in some smoothies. And so the kale will wilt a little bit. And that's what it's supposed to do. Cooks down. Nice sausage smell. All right, so let me show you what's going on. So we've got some kale, we've got some sausage. The kale starting to wilt, so we'll just stir it a little bit more. I feel like I need to get a like head camera, and then you could see down at the pan. That would look pretty cool, I think. All right, so then we want to drain and rinse our chickpeas. And like I've talked about before, it's good to rinse your beans to get some of the extra salt that's in them from the canning process. So I already drained them and I rinsed them, so I'm just going to add them in. We do have garbanzo beans or chickpeas in the pantry, so that's a good find. And I know this sounds like a kind of a weird combination, and the first time I made it, I was sort of skeptical too, but I end up like actually really enjoying it. I don't know, there's something about it that is tasty, and it's nice that you don't really need like complicated ingredients. And I like that it doesn't necessarily like call for spices as much as I like spices. Sometimes I get overwhelmed when there are like a bunch of things I need to measure out. And I'm gonna add a little bit more kale. Or if they're like spices that I don't always have. Like sometimes when I'm trying to make Asian dishes, they call for ground ginger. or normal ginger, and that's not always something I have on hand. So some things you can easily omit, and some things it kind of makes or breaks the dish. So sometimes cooking can be very much a trial and error. So we've got our kale, our chickpeas, and our sausage in there. Looking pretty good. We're actually almost done. That around, and then I don't always measure, to be honest, but I looked at the recipe today and noticed that it's only supposed to have a cup of marinara. But if you want more, add more, right? Especially if you like to add more sausage, or if you wanted to add more beans or more kale. So I just have a simple garlic and herb pasta sauce, Meyer brand. The nice thing about that is it is dairy free. You do have to check pasta sauces sometimes if you are dairy free, because some of them obviously, like if they're a cheese based one, then they'll have cheese in them. And one thing to, if you're kind of like paying close attention to what is in your food, a secret place that like people add sugar is in pasta sauce. So sometimes it's sort of crazy to like see how much added sugar is in there. And I think, it's like, it makes sense in some ways, right, to help with the acidity of the tomatoes. Let me use a spoon for this now. But if you're trying to like watch how much sugar you're eating, definitely take some time in the store to compare sugar content in your sauce. And it's nice these days, they've like updated the labels, so you know what is like natural sugar versus added sugar. So this is what it looks like now that we've added our pasta sauce. To be honest, a lot of times I'll just add the whole thing. And so I'm going to add a little bit more because I like things a little bit more saucy. And then the next step is to just put cheese on it and cover it and let it simmer. I'm actually not going to do that at the moment because like I said, I'm at my parents' house and my mom is dairy free. And so I'm not going to put, since I would like to put my normal cheese on it, I'll just let people top it with their own cheese so that she can also try it if she would like. Oh, yeah. Oh, canned tomato sauce with your own seasoning is good. And it is a little bit cheaper, right? You can buy canned tomato sauce that just doesn't have much flavoring, and add your own. I think that's a great idea. So again, that's what it looks like. I know it doesn't look super great. It's really tasty. And I'm gonna turn it off. So that's crazy. We finished that within less than 20 minutes. If you were letting the cheese like melt on there, it would probably take an extra 5 to 10. So again, this is like a super nice, super fast meal, and you can find garbanzo beans and pasta sauce at the pantry. And I wonder, I think it would also be good if you tried using, like if you're not a kale fan, you could use spinach pretty easily. I don't know about some of the other green vegetables, but it also reheats pretty well and it freezes really well. I have a habit of like making things and then not always finishing them within a week's time, so then I'll just throw them in the freezer, and then it's a good lunch to go, or like if you don't have any food in the house, I don't want to go to the store type business. Yeah. You can also, I know we talked about tomato sauce and then like adding your own spices. That's a good idea. You can also use diced tomatoes. So the last time that I made this skillet and I froze my Italian sausage, when I went to unfreeze it and use it, I had similarly like taken it out of the case, the sausage casing, and I added a can of diced tomatoes, some spinach, and then some different spices with pasta sauce and gnocchi. Which you can buy gnocchi from the store. It can be pretty cheap. I've gotten it at the dollar store before. And it was super tasty, right? Like you don't always need to buy like traditional pasta sauces for things to be good. So cool. Well, that was our super quick meal. And I'm gonna make some Lucky Charm treats. I think it's always, I don't know, I made Rice Krispie treats a few weeks ago, and I forgot how good they are. And so I think you can really make these with any kind of cereal you want. I mean, there are some cereals I probably wouldn't do. This is soft. But do y'all have a favorite like cereal treat? I know sometimes I've had one of my friends in college his mom used to make Cheerio treats, and so that was Cheerios, marshmallows, peanut butter, and those were super tasty. They'd be good with some chocolate chips in there too. Okay, so the recipe that I posted, I'm gonna cut that in half because when I bought marshmallows at the grocery store, it is not a full 16-ounce bag like the recipe calls for. So we'll just half the recipe and it'll be fine. So our butter is pretty melty because I left it out and it is warm today. So we're going to cut it in half because the recipe calls for half of a cup, but that's a full stick. And so we're just going to put it in our pan. You want to like get a bigger pan because everything's going to go in here. And so, right, if I was making the full recipe, I would need that, like my whole box of Lucky Charms. But I'm only making half, which is still like 5 cups. And so we are going to use a big pan so we have room to stir them in. Ooh, gnocchi for $1 at Joe Randazzo's. It's a pretty good price. You can make your own. I've tried to do it once with like leftover mashed potatoes. So gnocchi is basically like, most of the time it's just made out of potatoes and some sort of binder, but doesn't always turn out as well as it does when you buy it. So we're gonna melt there, and I'm sad that you can't see what's going on in the pan, but it's fine. So I'm gonna find my spatula, and this is starting to melt pretty well because it's already sort of warm in here. So you can see we just threw a stick of butter in there, and you can see it's starting to melt on the bottom. Once it's fully melted, we can throw in our marshmallows and we'll melt that together. And so, yeah, the nice thing about cereal-based treats is they're so easy. I mean, if you want to eat them immediately, it's not really a thing because you need to let them sit and cool for a little bit. But there are so many combinations, and I feel like there are lots of cereals that would be good, like Fruity Pebbles would be good. So it's a nice thing that, like, if you have an abundance of cereal or you have a cereal like you don't really want to eat, you add marshmallows. It's Are there any desserts that y'all have been making in quarantine? Or do you have some favorite like summer desserts? Because I'm trying to think about things that I don't have to turn my oven on, especially on super warm days like today. There's very little that I want. Our butter is all melted. And so we will be adding a bag of marshmallows. This is, again, just a store brand. And so most of the time when you're making like Rice Krispie treats, or in this case Lucky Charm treats, I think it's easier to have mini marshmallows because then they'll melt faster because they're smaller. And so we're just going to keep stirring this until the marshmallows have melted. So it might take a couple minutes, but again, this is all pretty fast. And it smells so good. I'm very excited that it's like sort of like campfire season too. Because then it means s'mores, and that always makes me happy. I'll take a second and you can look and see that the marshmallows are starting to melt. It's hard to tell, kind of probably just looks like they're all together, which they more or less are. Oh yeah, banana ice cream. That's a good idea. I also have been buying bananas and then like don't eat them, and then once I get to a certain point, right, I'm like, these are banana bread bananas. And then I don't want to make banana bread, so a lot of the times I'll also freeze them. And mashing them is a good idea. Sometimes I'll throw them in the blender with like a little bit of milk, and then it has similarly like an ice cream consistency. Sometimes I'll put peanut butter in there, and chocolate chips are always a good idea. I've also been making smoothies, so it's nice with smoothies, right? You can kind of throw any frozen or fresh fruit in there, and then different greens if you want, nuts if you want. I like using almond milk instead of water, so it gives it a little bit of a flavor. And then I can make it, like I can thin it out. So a lot of this time I'm using all frozen stuff, and so it can get pretty thick. You see our marshmallows are almost 100% there. Yeah, blending it with milk. One of my sisters is vegan, and so she would make banana ice cream all the time, and so she would often, I'm gonna turn this off because it's all melted. She would do like bananas, almond milk, and then some walnuts. I don't always have walnuts because nuts can be expensive. So we're gonna put a 1/4 teaspoon of salt in here. I'm gonna mix it around before I mix in the cereal. We do have some nuts at the pantry. I think we have walnuts right now, which is always a welcome thing. So I already measured out cereal because I didn't want you to have to watch me just measure out cereal. So this is about half of the box because we're halving the recipe. Just pouring it all in there. And then you just, I don't know if it's loud for you, but you just mix it around until you feel like the cereal is like evenly and fully coated. I like extra marshmallow, and so although I did half the recipe, I used a 10-ounce bag of marshmallows so that it would be super marshmallowy. So you can see that it's mixed and it's nice and gooey. Thing that I should have done before we started was was to grease my pan. So I'm just going to take, this is an 8x8. I'm just going to spray it with some canola oil. A lot of the times I personally don't have spray. So I'll just take and put a little bit of oil on like a paper towel and just spread it around. So I'm just going to move a couple of things so that I can bring my pan over here. And then y'all can see the yummy goodness that will be these treats. So we are going to dump them into our sprayed pan. And I think, right, oh, these will be thick. The recipe says you can put it in a 9x13 pan if you're making the full recipe, or if you like them thicker, you could put it in a square pan. So I'm trying to get all of the gooiness out so that it's in the pan and none of it is wasted. Sorry, it's probably an awkward angle for y'all. It's pretty good. So then we're just gonna spread it out in the pan so that it's more even. Sometimes if you feel like it's sticking a bunch to your spatula, you could always spray your spatula with some canola oil as well, or coconut oil or avocado oil, or whatever your preference may be. This one's getting very sticky, so we're gonna see. So this is another one, and so you can see it's almost like flattened in there. I'm just gonna like flatten it a little bit more. You don't want to push too hard because the recipe says if you push too hard, you will have hard treats. I don't think you probably want. Yeah, so we're just gonna let that sit. Let me see. I didn't actually pull up the recipe. But so it says allow to cool completely before cutting into squares. So you could stick it in the fridge if you wanted it to cool faster. I'm in no particular rush, but I'm excited to eat them because I don't think, to be honest, I don't think I've ever made Lucky Charm treats before. So I think it'll be super good and super exciting. And then it'll have like double or triple marshmallow, which is always a great idea. So like last time, we made things pretty quick, which is always nice. I'm already warm and we've only been in here for 30 minutes. So if there's anything that you would like to see, recipes you want me to try, anything like that, feel free to comment and I'll always take a look at them. We do have another Cooking with Colbath next week. I have not decided what I'm going to make yet, so it'll be a fun surprise for all of us. But if you have suggestions, feel free to throw them in the chat. Oh, adding in berries or something to the Cheerio treats. I've never tried. I think it would be good. I wonder, right, with like some dried fruits or something, I would worry that depending on what kind of fruit it was, that it might like break, right? Like if you had blueberries and they were getting sort of warm or you're trying to mix them around, it would break. But I think, right, it would be good. And especially I wonder with like Special K that has like those dehydrated strawberries in them. I think if you had those, that would be pretty tasty. Or if you could do like some sort of like raspberry or something. I feel like you could easily throw raisins in there. I'm not always a huge raisin person, but they are good. I'm trying to think of other berries that would be good that wouldn't necessarily like mush. Because I mean, theoretically, right, you could like put half of it down in a pan and then you could drop some berries in and then put half of it on. So it's like a nice berry layer in the middle. That's a super idea, Tyler. You know what's up. If anybody tries it or knows of something, let me know, because I think that would be interesting and super tasty. If there are other desserts that you know of that are no bake, especially in the time of summer, please drop them. I think about baking things sometimes on the show, but I think sometimes it's hard, right? If it is sitting in the oven for 20 minutes, then you just get to listen to me talk. So we'll see. Might be a good like video where it's like time lapsed and recorded, so that you can kind of skip forward on the steps. Yeah, so maybe we'll try something cool and different next time. So next Tuesday, 4 o'clock, we'll either be on Facebook Live or we might try doing a YouTube premiere, but you'll still be able to comment during that as well. So make sure we're going to try to upload these on YouTube so that you can have them to your, you can watch them whenever you want. So thanks so much for tuning in, and we will see you next week.